It's been a couple of days. I talked to the owner of this Mustang. We've decided what we are going to do from here is kind of go forward with putting it back together. Setting valve lash, which we have to do hot, so the valve covers are going to need to be put back on. I'll go through that process in a different video. I'll actually show you a couple different ways to do that on a solid lifter car or truck or motorcycle or whatever you've got with solid lifters. There's a couple of pretty fail-safe ways as long as you know the firing order of the engine. And actually there's one that doesn't really matter what the firing order is. So what we'll do is I'm going to pop these valve covers back on, get this thing ready to actually fire up. And when we do that, this has been sitting, I guess, about 5 months now. It drove itself in here for storage and has not moved since. So we'll get it ready. I'll show you some of the things we're going to look over and make sure are actually good to go on this. In the meantime, I'll just kind of fast forward. Alright, so where we're at right now is I'm ready to fire this car up for the first time in several months. There are a few things that we don't have to worry about on this car because of the way it's built. One, it's got an electric fuel pump, so it will prime itself and fill the carburetor very easily. That does add something else that I can check in here. I'm going to pull that air cleaner off and make sure that the float settings in the carburetor are not dumping gas down inside the engine before we try to fire it. Two, this has steel braided fuel lines front to back. They have a Teflon coating inside. They are not susceptible to rust or corrosion. Really, there's no place other than this regulator for junk to get in and clog up the carburetor. So I'm not really that worried about that because that's a nice aluminum regulator. I'm sure it's going to be fine. Other than that, there are a couple of other things that are not great about how this car was stored. We'll see how it starts. It has a kind of a little bit different system on it. I already ran the fuel pump a few minutes ago just to make sure the battery was up and seemed like it was going to run. But I'll go ahead, check the oil. Always check the oil before you start an engine that's been sitting. This one's going to be fine. It's been sitting in a climate controlled garage the entire time it's been in storage. There's no gigantic puddle on the floor. It does drip, but there's no puddles. So all the fluids are going to be fine on this car, but you do want to take a look at all that. Engine, transmission, anything that's going to spin right away, coolant. We're not really going to run this car very long right now. We're strictly going to fire it and see how it starts after about 5-month hibernation. And that's why I wanted to run the fuel pump. What happened there is this has a Holley style carburetor on it. The needle and seat in the rear float bowl are stuck. So as the fuel pump runs, fuel is overflowing into this bowl and then flooding the rear end, or the rear bores of the carburetor out. So what we'll have to do now is try to remember how Holley carburetors, needle and seat work. It's been a while since I've really done anything with Holleys. I know this is our float level adjustment here. but I do not remember how to take it apart. So I'm going to have to look that up, get back into it. I don't personally run a Holley on anything that I own. I do think they're a great carburetor, but I just don't run them, so I'm not as familiar with them as the stuff that I have. So we'll go ahead and pause this. I'll do a little bit of research, make sure I'm not going to screw anything up, and we'll get back to it. Off camera there, I was trying to figure out how these float systems work, or try to refresh my brain on how that happened, or how they function. One of the old tricks is, if you have one of these that's sticking, you tap the screw head with the handle of a screwdriver, and sometimes the jarring action of that will knock it loose and cause it to, and make it start working right again. Well, while I was doing that, the fuel pressure regulator, which I said was a nice piece 10 minutes ago, also sprung a leak and started spraying fluid basically towards the camera. So we're going to take a little break from this one. I definitely need to get some seals and figure out what's going on with the fuel pressure regulator. Really, it's not my car. I will give him the option to do what he wants, as far as either rebuild that regulator if it's possible, or get a replacement. There's already a nice aluminum plate mounted there, so I would think if we do replace it, it'll be the same unit or the same style. So I guess this is it on the Mustang for a little bit. Yeah. Maybe next week we'll get it to actually start. In the meantime, it is a beautiful day outside. I don't know what the temperature is, but it is extremely bright and sunny, and I've been walking around outside without a coat for the first time in quite a while. So I'm gonna call this a day for today, and maybe go see if I can get my old green truck out. That's been a little while since I shot some video on that, and with the weather we've had the last 3 days, it may actually be melted out to where I can get to it. Alright, we'll see you later.